Welcome to another episode of the Gay Barchive Show, where we explore gay history one bar at a time. I'm your host, Art Smith, and our guest today is author, historian, and iconic drag queen, BJ Daniels. So welcome to the show, BJ.
Thank you for having me, Art.
You're quite welcome. It's always kind of interesting to get the perspective of people from different parts of the country about the gay bar scene in their area. And you're kind of an iconic figure in the Wisconsin drag scene. I think you've been performing there, 40 years? Something like
Yeah, a little over 40 years. So late 70s is when I came out in Madison, Wisconsin, and went to my first gay bar.
Now, when I first started doing the research for my Gay Barchives project, one of the first areas that I found a lot of information about, surprisingly to me, was Wisconsin. And it amazed me how many bars there were in Madison, in Milwaukee, in a variety of different cities throughout Wisconsin, going back into the 60s and 70s. It was actually kind of a shock to me.
Well, if you think about the politics of Wisconsin, we've always been known as a progressive state. And even now we have a Democratic governor. But we were on the forefront of creating rights for LGBT people in the early 80s here. So I think, moving to Madison, I didn't know any different. But it was, I think, very open in the late 70s. There was a lot of bars.
Now, one of the bars that I know that you have worked at was kind of to me as an outsider, kind of a weird logo, Roman numeral kind of thing going on. And it was called 219. What was your experience at 219?
Well, Club 219 actually started out as a different bar, and they changed their name. The address was 219 South 2nd, so it was always called Club 219. So that's just, their logo. I know a lot of people that aesthetically didn't like it, but, it was their address. So, they decided to start giving the Baton in Chicago a run for their money. The Baton was a female impersonator nightclub, and they wanted to kind of emulate that success and bring in the glamour of the nightclub era of the 80s. Pre-AIDS was like pretty huge. So they wanted to develop a professional drag show cast that would be featured there many times weekly.
Yeah, and the Baton is actually still operating. They opened in 1969, mm-hmm. and not too far down the road, I'm hoping to get to do an interview with Jim Flint. We've scheduled 2 or 3 times already, and there's always been a last minute issue. So hopefully we'll get him. But they just celebrated their 53rd anniversary in March, so pretty long running there.
Totally. Yeah. Oh yeah. And Chili Pepper, if you can get her too. She's in the other book that I'm in right now, the Legends of Drag book. So she's an icon of Chicago.
So yeah, you had a little history with 219. What was the club itself like?
I was there for 13 years, so I was there, more than a decade. It was a very interestingly set up bar because you walked in at street level, and there was a large half circular bar to the left and the restrooms in the front. And then like a center sort of cruise bar kind of thing. And then over on the right side was an entrance that went down to the downstairs, which was an S&M bar. And so that was like their other place was right downstairs. So then if you looked up, though, there was another set of stairs that went up to a dance floor that was elevated. So the first part of the stage was, at this elevation. And then the second part was even higher. So by the time you were looking up from when you walked in, the stage was like 10 feet high. And it was a great place to be a performer. They invested thousands and thousands in lighting and sets and really produced this big thing, at least for the first probably 4 or 5 years. We had Divine there as our guest star at the 5th anniversary, which was 87. So Divine was the guest star.
Very cool. Now, you've also performed a couple of times. We were talking about the Baton in Chicago, but there's a bar in Milwaukee that is the longest running gay bar in the state of Wisconsin. It's a bar called This Is It. And it opened actually the year before the Baton. It opened in 1968, and it's still operating. I think they're about to celebrate their 54th year in business. What was This Is It like back then?
Well, everybody kind of caters to different things. And at that time, I mean, this was a bar that was right off Cathedral Square. It was kind of on the down low kind of feel about it, certainly a landmark, but, like a little side door and whatever. And it was known then as an older men's bar, is what we younger people at that time thought in the early 80s.
You're being polite. I've been told wrinkle room.
Yes, people called it a lot of things. This is tired, or this isn't it, or this is shit, or, I mean, which is horrible to say that. But because it was so iconic, it just went through these things. So, yeah, in recent times I did, but one thing that was very funny is that downtown Milwaukee, this is a kind of an urban area. So where the bar was located was in a very busy area. And I lived in an apartment building around the corner with like 4 queens. And we would go down the fire escape through the alley, because they had an alley entrance. So This Is It literally could be very on the down low, where you could just go through the alley to enter. And we would go in there and get drinks and then take the glasses with us. And then we had like glasses, for home after that. And they'd be like,
naughty girls.
More drinks till you bring back the glasses.
You naughty girls. And that was the interesting thing too to me about that particular bar, is that they were under the same ownership for most of that 40 plus years, that 50 plus years they'd been there.
Yeah.
It was the same family ownership. So it's quite a legend in its own right there. Now, understand in the recent years it has actually become the it place in Milwaukee. That is now the hot bar that everybody wants to go to. Doing parts of the new owner, George Snyder, and Trixie Mattel, of course.
Well, yeah, we interviewed him for the book that we did, The History of Milwaukee Drag, 7 Generations of Glamour. And the reason why, yes, he's on the forefront of creating a new nightclub scene by including as many different types of performance as he possibly can, and really creating that atmosphere for people. And young people love it. I think it's fantastic. It's great. But that's how it's always been, though, in the scene. 219 was that place at one time. La Cage was that place at one time. And the fact that some of these older bars are still around says that there's a multi-level of ages within the community. So I would say This Is It is, for it's the it place because it's hip and cool and young.
And I just spoke to your co-author of the drag history book, Michael Takash. I spoke to him earlier today, and he told me that he was at This Is It last weekend, and that it was packed wall to wall, which was totally different than what it would have been like 7 or 10 years ago.
Oh, for sure. Oh, yeah. And that really was what they first started doing, was having like viewing parties for RuPaul's Drag Race and stuff like that, because Trixie Mattel was a friend of the bar. And, so this is like what, like 12 years ago or something. And so it progressed from there. So they would start having, these nights, and little by little, people started coming to rewatch RuPaul's Drag Race and Kiki with whatever drag queen was hosting. And there was not a lot of room for shows. So, I mean, he's done a lot to bring it from that moment, along with Trixie's support as a co-owner, to open it up, expand it, make this big stage, make it a better environment. So I would not be surprised if he took over the whole block eventually. He's a cool guy.
Well, I will be interviewing him next week. So I'm kind of excited about that too. Is there a chance that you may show up there again on stage?
I would love to. I have been asked and stuff. I just have not been performing a lot since COVID and everything. I had a few health things. So given my senior status, it's not that I don't want to, but I have been prevented from. But of course, any place that'll have an old bag is a good place.
Well, I think we're about the same age. I graduated high school in June of 77, and I think I saw somewhere that you graduated December of 77. So
right.
So we're pretty close in age. We have the same kind of perspective on the gay community. And I know that my partying days have kind of wound down. I do not go out 8 nights a week like I used to, and stay out until sunrise and then roll into work. So
right, yeah,
my habits have changed somewhat as well.
Exactly, yeah. You have to plan those things out. But it's cool though that you're chronicling this history. I feel like, just given what is happening in the world so much right now, that doing these podcasts and just, telling these intimate stories of people's experiences is really what is feeding kind of, the new generation, and giving them something to look back at that they may not have known about. Because a lot of my young friends are just like, oh my God, I love it. Or somebody got a book from me recently, and they were like, I'm loving learning this history. So that is amazing. I'm sure you get the same kind of comments.
I do. And as you know, when we were in high school, not only was there no gay history to look at, but there was very little acknowledgement that there was even a community or a lifestyle. As a high school senior, I had a boyfriend, but I didn't know it. And he didn't know it either. We were good friends. We would fool around sexually together. We would go do things together, take little trips to wherever. But we didn't know that there was such a thing as, gay boyfriends. We just thought we were kind of buddies that were, I don't know, exploring some kind of sexual urge, but not that it would ever be anything that would last any length of time. I'm sure both of us thought we were going to get married at some point because there were no gay characters on TV. There were no gay people to read about in books. The only time you ever heard about somebody gay was if they were either some kind of twisted criminal pervert or, some scandalous situation from, ancient history, like Oscar Wilde or something. There was no acknowledgement of being gay. So when we found the bars, even without having to drink, just being able to go into a place and socialize with 50 or 100 or 1,000 other people who were like us, made all the difference to, our lives and where we went from there.
Right. Oh, of course. I mean, my thing was that I fooled around with a neighbor too, who, ended up also being gay. And then somebody, so in my little rural area, there ended up being, a few people, but it was really, wasn't really discussed. And yeah, the thing that I remember were two things. So mine was a book that I saw at I don't even remember, it was Stop and Go or 7-Eleven, called The Lord Won't Mind. And it was like a gay romance novel, kind of thing. And I bought it and I read it and I was just like, that's it. You know what I mean? It was like about this romance. So that summer, I was in a community theater production, and the choreographer was this gorgeous dude with long hair, cute, and his roommate was somebody that I went to high school with. And I thought, well, that's weird, you know. But then it kind of dawned on me, oh my God, they're boyfriends. But I totally fell in love with him, and I totally like stole him as a little 17-year-old vixen from the other person, and had an affair all that summer. And that's when I decided I am graduating early. I was supposed to graduate in 78,
Right.
but I finished credits early and moved to Madison. And yeah, once you find the bar, you can't not go, because it becomes like such a confirmation of who you are. Because it's the first time that you're experiencing that. Friendships, things you can talk about with people. And
right. You have this whole community, this whole support system that helps you navigate through the questions and the issues and, you know, all the self-doubting and everything that's going on in your head.
Right.
And so that's kind of why I started this project. It really blossomed in the early days of COVID in March of 2020. Before then, I had only documented a handful of bars. And once COVID shutdown started happening and we had more time at home because you weren't going out, I really dove into the project, and I realized that, you know, we have done a great job of reporting the criminal activity in the gay community for decades, of the riots, of the revolutions, of all this stuff that's gone on, you know, but we've not done a very good job of documenting the nightlife, which played such an important role in our development as a community. You know, we didn't really pay much attention to a lot of the drag queens, which you have done a great job. You know, you and Michael with your book on history of Milwaukee drag. And, you know, that's an aspect that had been left out. And the nightclub scene, I realized so many people didn't acknowledge it or, you know, document it at all. There were people here and there who each remembered a handful of bars, but there was no collective memory of all of these fabulous, I mean, thousands and thousands of bars all across the country that played such an important role in our community.
Well, you know, I just serendipitously found this woman on Facebook, and I don't remember how it was, but she said, "Oh my God, you're BJ Daniels," and it was like blah 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 back and forth. Well, she had documented Club 219 in 1985 over like a, I don't know, 3 or 4 week period, coming to shows, and I have those. I have those files they are amazing. It is literally a time capsule, and it's backstage and on stage, so you can really see how the stage is and all the people packed around. And, you know, I mean, it was a moment in time for sure.
Wow.
So I should share those with you. I'll send you the files. Art.
Are they photographs or what are they?
They're photographs. Yeah, she was getting her BFA in fine arts at UWM here in Milwaukee, and so, you know, and she's just this wonderful woman. So when she discovered them, I cried because I hadn't seen some of these people who are now, you know, have passed on in the early 90s, and to see them again young and how you remember them, and, you know, it brought back a lot of memories.
Oh, absolutely. I will definitely include some of those in this video, so they'll be preserved with the memories and the conversations that we've had, so that people can actually see them, because I think that's a big part of recording the history, is having the images to kind of spark those memories. And unfortunately, back in 1978, it was not cool to walk into a gay bar with a camera.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And it was not inconspicuous, because cameras back then were huge, and you required large flashes to be able to take a picture in a bar. So they were quite distracting. It's a big change.
Right.
Um, Now, currently, you're working in a bar environment, restaurant bar, that never could have existed back then. I mean, there were probably a handful across the country, examples of restaurants with full-blown drag shows, and certainly not as extensive as the Hamburger Mary's chain has grown to be. What's it like going from what used to be a pure, you know, disco dance bar scene into kind of a restaurant scene that has a little bit more of a family spin to it?
Well, I think the thing is, you go along with whatever the trends are. So being somebody from the 80s, the great thing for me is that I just pull out like the crowd pleaser songs that everyone likes, Taylor Dane, Eurythmics, things people can sing along to. And the thing is, you get so much from that. It's like up close magic, I always say, like Hamburger Mary's. You're not up on this tower, you are in front of people, so you're doing a little magic act with them, and you are trying to participate with them. So I think a good performer understands the difference of what a venue like that provides you as an entertainer and what, a more theatrical thing where you're apart from the audience provides. So it's a great training ground, I will say that. I mean, Jada Essence Hall, that won RuPaul's Drag Race. She's on the All Stars right now. She was one of the divas there and MCs. And I mean, seriously, watching somebody like her go from the first time they ever MC'd a show to the end and knowing how to work within a live audience of, people that aren't necessarily all gay, it's, I think it's an empowering thing.
Yeah, I've been to quite a few of the Mary's locations,
Mm-hmm.
and it definitely is a little bit different environment, partially because it's so focused on the food. That is a big part of it. Part of it because it's a chain, which we never really had very many chain bars in the gay community over the decades. And so it is a little bit different environment, but it is also a lot of kind of retro kind of campy attitude. It's definitely a kind of place that you would you kind of be energized and feel happy being there and enjoying the show.
Well, that the owners of the franchise are also the owners of the one here in Milwaukee and live here in Milwaukee.
So, I think they also own the one in Fort Lauderdale, don't they?
That I don't know. I never asked, I just know that every so often they're going over here and there to open another one or open another franchise. And they're great guys. They're really cool. And then they have the Camp Wanakiki show that they produce as well.
So yeah, they just opened the one in Fort Lauderdale again.
Okay.
About a year ago, I think, or maybe a little less than a year ago.
Yep, they're workers, but yeah, it's I think it's a great testament to entertainers is that you temper your performance to the audience you're performing to. So yeah, brunch show is different than the Saturday night 9:30 show,
Right.
So I'm and I never was like the real slutty performer anyway. I'm a glamour queen and a rocker chick, Now,
did you have back in the day when you were starting your career in, say, early 80s, did you do much in the way of production numbers, or was it mostly one-person shows?
No, we did a lot of production numbers, and that was sort of part of the thing. There were sort of stock numbers that we would do, but a lot of them were kind of like very nuanced and used the 2-level stage, like a Duke Ellington medley, in evening gowns, or we did numbers from Chicago, Cell Block Tango, stuff like that. I'm trying to think about the other ones we did. But yeah, Pointer Sisters, Cher, But yeah, we did a lot of those things. So usually every week you had one production number. and it was the closing thing of the show. So it made people stay longer. I mean, that was kind of the whole point.
Yeah, I kind of miss those days. My first gay bar experience was in 1978 in Baltimore at a bar called the Hippo.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I was visiting the guy I had been dating in high school who was going to college in Baltimore. And I went down there, and he had discovered the world of gay bars and took me there and didn't tell me it was a gay bar. He just said, we're going to this bar. And then next thing I know, 5 minutes after I start drinking my cocktail, I realize everybody on the dance floor is male. But not too long after that, I moved to Atlanta. And in Atlanta, we had a big drag scene. We had Lipsticks, Levitas, Hollywood Hot, Sweet Gumhead, Backstreet. I mean, the list goes on. There were dozens, Illusions, all these bars that had pretty large drag venues in them. And I really miss those production numbers. It seems like you don't see them as much anymore. Now a lot of stuff is just, one queen lip syncing to a song that, is on the radio or something.
Well, 219 did this thing where, they would design numbers for you. So I was lucky enough at that time that they were trying to be different than like pageanty. They were trying to be like MTV, like, edgy. So Robert Yavari, the designer, he designed things for me. So we did Here Comes the Rain Again with the stage raining on me at the end. And, we did things where there were ladders. We climbed these ladders up and you could go right into the ceiling of the third floor above and it would look like you disappeared. So it was, that was interesting too. People were not doing that. And very few photographs exist of any of those things because no one videotaped, so it was touted as a live video. Like, don't stay home and watch MTV. Come to, Club 219 tonight and see the live video.
Right.
And it was cool. So we did a lot of productions like that and elaborate sets for Christmas, like Bing Crosby type door that would open and then it would snow on you and the Christmas, it was like being in a department store. It was very high end. So that was just, a stroke of luck that I was part of that. But then, of course, like you're right, things changed. And as, the production values went down, you did what you could as the performer to try to save the show, and keep it as clean as you could, keep the riffraff out and keep it going.
Now, when we just talked earlier, I had also mentioned another club that's come up in conversation a few times in Milwaukee. It was called the 1100 Club. Did you ever work there?
I think I did a couple shows there infrequently. It was on the southern edge of Milwaukee going towards Bayview. And so it was a little hike of a way apart, but still kind of in the same vicinity. And I did a couple there. But truthfully, the thing was, in those days, people just kind of had their own little showcasts that were the same people that were in all their shows. So I was a special guest a couple times, but it was an okay place. I wouldn't say it was great. It was very, Milwaukee-ish, I guess I would say.
Well, I know when I've had conversations with Michael before about the Milwaukee scene, and it sounds like it was a very interesting kind of place as the gay community was evolving and the bar scene was evolving, because I think I recall him describing it, Milwaukee, as kind of a pub town where you would go down a block downtown and you would have, the Irish pub and the German pub and the, whatever Italian pub and all these different niche group had their own places, and the gays had them too.
Right. Yeah, that's true. And like we were saying before, there were so many bars at one time, I mean, I think it makes complete sense. Like you said earlier, you found your people. Well, all of a sudden your people, you realize that there's pockets of those people in a large metro area all around, so there, I think there were so many gay bars and things that were hole in the wall type things that like we discovered some that we'd never even heard of. And so I think that's the interesting thing about now, though, is that the gay bars have gone away because people have things like this. They can find out about their culture, online now. So I'm glad we can discuss these things and talk about all these places. Because, Milwaukee had, I don't know, 27 gay bars when I moved here, I think.
Yeah, that's about the same as Atlanta was when I lived there.
Right.
And one thing I've noticed, and I assume Milwaukee was kind of the same, is that back at that time in the early 80s, a lot of bars were very segregated. I'm not sure it was by design, but if you went into a bar that, a certain bar, it was likely to be all white male or, all lesbian or whatever. Right. There wasn't as much crossover. Now we have more of a queer bar scenario. When you do have a gay bar, it's like everybody's there. People of color, Hispanic people, white people, male, female, transgender, everybody kind of goes to the queer bar. Right. But back in those days, it seemed like it was, a white male bar or, was it the same way in Milwaukee? Was that the case back in the 80s?
I think so. I mean, I think that the big clubs, as far as Club 219 and some of the others go, it was, I would say, very mixed. And then don't forget, Club 219 also had a leather bar in the basement. So we had a drag show upstairs and a leather bar downstairs, which was very interesting. And
one of my favorite Atlanta drag queens would have been very at home there. Lily White.
Right.
Do you know Lily White?
I don't know her, but I know of her. Of course, she's famous.
Yeah, she passed away last year, but Lily was an icon in Atlanta, and she was like the mistress of the dark, drag queen. So she would have fit right in both the drag portion and the leather portion. Now, we've touched a couple of times briefly on this book that comes out. It's released actually on Monday.
Right.
Nobody will see this video before. So by the time they see this video, the book will have just been out. And it's called History of Milwaukee Drag.
I'm going to grab my copy.
7 Generations of Glamour. Oh, and there we go. Where did that inspiration come from? I know Michael has written about LGBT Milwaukee before and has been involved with the Milwaukee LGBT History Project. But where did the idea for this book come from?
Well, the idea came because he had done another book on LGBT history of Milwaukee.
Right.
So that was more the general information. Well, we crossed paths on that book, and he came over and realized that I had this huge, enormous trunk of clippings and I saved everything, gay bar rags and things that I was in and scrapbooks and pictures, and people started donating their pictures to me. I mean, there's still more to scan and archive. I mean, it's overwhelming. I have a lot of stuff. So we realized, though, that that was a nugget of me being an older queen and him being a historian was like, let's combine the things. So we worked on the book together, but he did the focus on the archival research, leading up to like the 70s. And then together we both worked on the gay liberation through today, because that's my era as 62. That's, so that worked out. And I had so many photos and stuff. So for example, I found these photos that I didn't even know existed. So this cover photo was by Ricky R. Helt and was just, in a trunk, and I didn't even know who to attribute it to, because so we we were able to track down people to give them credit. And our book is also a charity book that goes to Courage MKE, which is a homeless LGBT youth shelter. So we signed our rights away to any profitability on the book to them, gladly, to, keep the story going.
I completely understand that sentiment. I feel the same way about this. It's all about preserving the history, and it's on my website. In fact, I have a page called Archives that has over 100 listings of websites for different places around the country that archive gay history. So you can go look through there and find, you'll find, for instance, the MKE LGBT history website on there.
This is in our book too, which I love this one. And it is Bunny and Friends in Milwaukee in the late 50s, early 60s.
Very cool.
I know. So it's so there's a lot of great photos here. We're really happy we were able to do this book and, bring all this to light. But definitely I'm going to share a lot of these files with you because you'll love the stage photos and you may use them as you wish, my friend.
And I will.
Here's a production number. You asked about a production number. Here's us doing Cell Block Tango. So 6 queens. I'm the only one still alive.
Wow.
The only person still alive is me from that picture. Isn't that crazy?
I'm looking forward to reading that book. I think Michael told me that they were sending me a copy of it, so I haven't gotten it yet. But when I do get it, I will be reading it. And you're welcome to share information about it. I noticed just before we started this interview that you are now a member of the Gay Archives group.
Yes.
We have almost 5,500 members now. The group is a little over a year old, but people in there love talking about gay bar history. So anything you want to share personally, professionally, that relates to that, random photos, questions about, hey, who remembers this bar or that bar?
This is the other book that just came out, The Legends of Drag Queens of a Certain Age. So I'm sure there's queens in here that my friend.
I am sure.
So, this
including you now.
Okay. Did you get this too?
No, I have not, but
okay. Well, this one just came out and it's by Harry Hansen and Devin Antheus. And Harry Hansen is from Shorewood originally, Milwaukee. And so, this has 81 queens from around the country, including, Milwaukee and Chicago and LA, everywhere. So it's Atlanta. So I'm sure you would know a lot of these people.
Oh, I'm sure.
Shauna Brooks.
Yep.
Tina DeVore.
Yep. She just recently passed away.
Yep, exactly. So I think this would be loved by any of your Barchives folks because it's not only is it a well thought out how he photographed each queen in the same sort of lighting with the same sort of outdoor approach. No one's in the dark. Everyone's in natural daylight, which I thought was so cool. And then he also gives everyone stories, so here's Chili Pepper.
Very cool.
Yeah, I think you would love this book. So another one for.
I will definitely have to order one of those. And,
I think there's something wonderful about saying I'm going to build a real a book library, not just a virtual thing, but have these things to look at because somebody told me, they said, well, it's not something you read at one time. And I said, of course, this is something you thumb through. You read a portion of that history or of that person in the Legends book, and you come back to that. Right. It's not something that you have to read at once. So.
Yeah. And I've got a bookshelf now. I've probably got, 30, 35 books that I've purchased since I started doing these interviews from all different kinds of authors that have written all kinds of books about gay history and gay bars and the serial killers that have existed in the gay bar scene, and the upstairs lounge Inferno down in New Orleans, and there's one out called A Dark Room in Glitterball City. That's about a murder in Louisville, Kentucky. That was it was murder of a drag queen by a gay bar owner.
Wow.
So,
well, listen, there's a lot of evil people out there too. Trust me, I've known some.
But there's so many
really
out
awful
there,
bar owners that were,
and so many people like Michael, who has done the LGBT Milwaukee book, or David Jackson, who did LGBT Kansas City.
Yeah.
Who would think in a city the size of Kansas City there would have been hundreds of gay bars that existed over time? But yet there was
a combination of need and people that could make cash off of gay people on the down low. I think that's the important thing that we found out, is that, of course, people opened gay bars and stuff, but they were charged a premium for the silence of the owners and, blah, blah, blah.
And as I recall, you may have the same memories, but in the late 70s, early 80s, if you walked into a typical gay bar, it was kind of like what I envision This Is It to have been at that time. Kind of a dark, dingy, dumpy place. It wasn't particularly nice. It wasn't decorated, really. It was just like, okay, you're allowed to come in here and pay us for a drink.
Right.
And, and we went.
That is true. It kind of reminded me, though, in those old days, like what I remember just the most about it before it was totally remodeled, was that it just was like, had this kind of nice, sort of like 60s, like red carpeting and like, over the top kind of flocked wallpaper and gold things. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
With like cheesy paneling and.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And, and that's what it was. But it was, listen, I had many a drunken night there. And like I said, we used to go there and like try to steal the glasses until they.
Well, we were happy to have those places. But then once we start getting into the age of having, the bigger dance clubs and the fancy places, then we felt really special. When you could, and I'm sure as a performer, when you could walk out for the first time onto a proper stage that had proper curtains behind you and lighting and a good sound system, it just made you feel like you were Barbara Streisand or something. You were a celebrity.
Well, and that's what 219 had going for it, was that it was set up where the show was in the center of the club. So you had, a higher area here, the lower bar here, dance floor and other bar, and they even had a little patio out the back. But in the middle would be me right there, 2-tiered stage. So people would walk by the stage as they were going up to the dance floor. They could tip you that way. People could come over to the dance floor side. They could tip you that way. But then from the front of the bar, all those people way down here, when they looked up, of course, they could see you because you were elevated like 10 feet in the air. So it was a win-win. And when they had installed video cameras and stuff too, it was played on cameras then. So we had a spotlight person that climbed up a ladder way up to the top of the third floor thing. I mean, it had a production, and we had a light guy and a DJ booth that overlooked the stage. So it was very technologically, for the time, I think, very well done,
Yeah, and that was a trend that was growing in the 80s throughout the country, is to see more, proper venues for the gay community to be able to go and see shows and to have cocktails. And we started to feel like, real people. We didn't feel like we were second-class citizens. We started to find bars that had street-facing entrances. We didn't have to crawl around a dark alley and sneak into a warehouse-looking door. Some bars had windows, which was like exciting. Oh my God, we can look outside. We're not trapped in a prison box.
Right. And I think too that that kind of thing too allowed us to create our own stars, because back then too, bartenders were stars, kind of in their own rights, right? We all knew so-and-so at this bar. And so were the queens though too. BJ was 219 queen. The 219 girls were like the creme de la crop, of that time period. That was the aspiration, would be to be able to be one of their people. And then about 2 years later, La Cage opened, and that was another. They did a full blown drag show too, and were successful with that as well. So at one point, there were 2 competing drag shows in Milwaukee. So that was like a crazy time period. We do talk about that a lot in the book too. So,
well, I'll definitely be looking forward to reading it. I can't wait to see the book and to kind of learn a little bit more about the scene in Milwaukee. And I have never been in Milwaukee, so one of these days I'll have to actually make it there.
Yeah.
But now, I after starting this project, I've documented over 2,000 gay bars around the country that used to exist. And there are still many more to come. A friend of mine just has a book at the publishers right now documenting the gay bar history of Chicago. And they stopped at 1,001 bars, nightclubs, restaurants,
Right.
establishments, but 1,001 in one city over a period of time.
Right.
So I know my 2,000 is a drop in the bucket. There's going to be many more.
And that's the thing. You're right, Art. The funny thing is that we both said, Michael and I both said this. Our book is called A History of Milwaukee Drag. It's not the history because, the thing was there was no way we could feature every single person or, mention every single performer because Milwaukee's huge. It's had thousands. But we also said, we hope our book is an inspiration for others to step forward, contact us, say, hey, I have a story to tell too. Let me talk to you about it. So I felt like it's the beginning. It's the book isn't sort of the end product yet. I think that what you're doing and what we've done, let's get other people to do it. And I am not opposed to doing, a part 2 or a whatever to keep telling these stories and sharing these memories and archives of the bars, which were, and I think still are, an important part of gay culture, but maybe not as much as I felt they really were in that, 80s, 90s, AIDS era, where people just wanted solidarity and to have that feeling of community more.
Yeah, they definitely have a little bit of a different purpose now, but still, I agree. I think we still need them. I think we will always need them.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm so happy in the course of this research to have discovered, at least half a dozen bars that have opened since COVID.
Right.
New ones, most of them leaning more toward the queer concept, not being denominational, but there's one called Q in Hell's Kitchen, New York City. Okay. There's a new Freddy's Beach Bar in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. There's a bar in Washington, D.C. called As You Are that just opened. And, there are numerous other ones around the country that...
Well, and then you have This Is It, which has reimagined itself to the queer culture and has taken itself and really solidified its historic status as a long-running gay bar by shifting with the times and
absolutely
addressing those and reaching out to these to be that community for the queer culture.
I am looking forward to interviewing George Snyder.
Yes, and he is a cutie pie.
I can't wait to hear his stories about that bar. And to learn more about how he has embraced this 21st century change in the queer scene. So I'm looking forward to that. Now you as we've already mentioned, you've got this A History of Milwaukee Drag that you've got coming out on Monday.
Right.
You appear in the book Legends of Drag.
Yes.
As a legendary drag queen, and you're going to be a model for, is it Sculpture Milwaukee?
Yes.
And an upcoming project featuring the outdoor sculptures that appear around Milwaukee. What, after all these accomplishments, what do you have planned for next year? Is there anything left?
Will there be anything left? I think that to myself. I think like every time I go, oh my gosh, I have to do this. What if I'm dead next year? I mean, I do. You do think that after a while, but I feel like if I'm able to be visible as a symbol of survival from an era where you and I know we lost a lot of friends, a lot of talented people, a lot of things, and not to be corny, but to be able to tell their stories or even represent aging in our community to the young people. I mean, that's why I love RuPaul and some of these other folks that are of a certain age. And so this Legends book is great, and anything that I'm asked to do, I am more than happy to accommodate. So yeah, the Sculpture Milwaukee thing is going to be very cool. I mean, they're going to actually shoot it in my dressing room here, and they have this whole campaign laid out where they are featuring artistic people talking about why public art matters.
That is awesome. And I'm glad that they recognize you, as a person worthy of being in that project, because so many cities, especially in some of these red states, wouldn't even think twice about having a drag queen appear in anything. And
right.
So it's...
Well, I was on the cover of Milwaukee magazine 2 years ago too, with a 6-page photo spread. So that was kind of surprising then too. That was pre-pandemic. That came out in September of 2019.
Wow.
So it was like, oh my God, I'm doing all this stuff and then everything shut down. You know what I mean? And so now it's like I feel like I'm kind of picking up from that in a weird way. Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad that you have taken the time to tell us about some of your stories from Milwaukee and the bars you've worked in,
yeah,
the projects you're working on. I mean, this drag history book, I can't wait to see it. So thank you so much.
You are so welcome. Thanks for having me. I'm going to, just share your work with as many people as I can, because I know people are really wanting more of this personal testimony. So thanks, Art.
That concludes another episode of the Gabe Archive Show. For more information about this episode or to find more episodes, visit gabearchives.com.